Hello everyone, Thomas Hyman here, founder and CEO of Realty Partners, and this is a training session on using DocuSign in conjunction with Form Simplicity. And this is really intended primarily for our team, for our agents. But if you're a real estate agent using MFR or Matrix MLS and Form Simplicity, the same thing is going to be true for you. So I'm going to walk through just a random property here that I pulled up on the MLS. It's a condominium, and I'm going to go through preparing a contract. I'm not going to use an as-is contract because my buyer is not an investor, my hypothetical buyer. So I really want to make sure that there are any issues that are found, that there's a repair limit, that the seller is going to make some repairs, and that my buyer is not going to miss out on it. You know, the challenge with using an as-is contract, of course, is that the seller is not obligated to make any kind of repairs, and even if it was something small, they may just say, you know, forget about it. If you don't like it, walk. And the buyer, you know, misses out on an opportunity. So here we go. Here is a property listing that I pulled up. And the first thing I want to, pay attention to is, who is the listing agent here. And I got their email address, which we will use later in DocuSign, in the DocuSign setup. And of course we have, the property information here. But the most important thing I want to look at right now is the set of icons here at the top. If I'm going to hover here, first of all, it's going to take me to attachments. And this is where hopefully I'll find a seller's disclosure, maybe a condominium disclosure, etc., etc. And then the other icon is this one here, FS, Form Simplicity, which will actually launch Form Simplicity and pulls in all of the data from the property listing, which makes it very, very easy. The first thing I want to do is go here to the attachment, because I need to know what kind of documents are here, because if I already have a document here, then I don't need to recreate it in Form Simplicity. So I'm going to click on here to see, what kind of thing this is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder here. I'm just going to create it here, sample transaction. I'm going to create a folder that I'm going to save everything to temporarily. So I'm going to save it here. It's downloading it, does the virus scan, etc. And I should be able to open it now. Yep, it's done. So I'm going to open it, and I'm going to take a look at it. The first thing, of course, is I want to see, is there a condominium association disclosure in here? So this is a property disclosure statement, which of course the seller already initialed. It's very helpful to get that right up front. If I didn't have the property seller disclosure, then I would actually be calling the listing agent and ask them to send that over to me, because I want this disclosure to be part of my offer. I don't want to send an offer without a disclosure, and then the seller is going to send the disclosure back, which kind of creates a counteroffer, and then my buyer is going to have to initial and send it back to the seller. So I want to have all my ducks in a row. Now it does talk about condominium homeowners association, so it is disclosing that there is, it's located in a CDD. There's an association. But it doesn't really talk about the fees or anything, okay? Now, all right, so I saved this file right now. I'm good to go with that, but I know I don't have an association disclosure. So what I need to know is the association name and the fees, and I'm just going to go ahead by what is here in the listing, okay? So it's Silver Sands is the name of the community, and let's see if I can find where we have the dues. We have the taxes up here. It doesn't list the CDD fee. And I don't have the information here that I see it right now. So I would get on the horn and I would talk to her and say, hey, how much are the condo dues for this property? Because I want to put that into the, here we go, $525, okay? Now another thing here in the remarks down here is under building parking space number 138 goes with the condominium. Very important. I want to put that into the contract. I'm not just going to assume that it goes with it. I want to put that into the contract. All right. So let's go to Form Simplicity to create the offer. So I'll click on that icon and it's going to take me straight to Form Simplicity. Obviously, I'm logged in as me here. Now you can import tax data. I personally never, concerned myself with it. So I'm just going to focus on the property. And as you can see, the property information is already pulled into here. Association fees. We just had this here. $525 a month. I'm just going to put that in here, $525 a month. And here's the listing price of $695. And let's say our buyer is going to offer $665. So that is the offer price on the property. It already has the MLS listing ID in here. Now, the seller's name usually gets pulled into here, okay? So let's take a look what the MLS listing here says. And as you can see, the owner is blank, okay? I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the seller's property disclosure and see if there's an owner name there. And here we go, Harriet L. Zimmer, Revocable Trust. So Harriet L. Zimmer, Revocable Trust is the name of the seller. If the seller was entered into the MLS, then it would be in there. It wasn't, so I'm going to enter it. Harriet L. Zimmer, Revocable Trust. Harriet L. Zimmer, Revocable Trust. I don't need the address here. I don't need seller 2. If there was, if there were 2 people, then I would put seller 1 and seller 2. The seller's brokerage is in here already. So now I just got to put in the buyer's name, okay? And let's say the buyer is Susan Home Buyer. Susan Home Buyer. And I'll put her address in here, 123 Any Street, in Sarasota, Florida, 34243. It's good to have address of the parties on the contract for notice purposes. So I like to put it on there if I have it. Obviously, all of my information is already in here. And now I click to add to transaction. And I'm going to create a new transaction. Okay, so I'm going to create a new transaction here. And it's going to be the same as the property name. So it's going to create a new transaction for this property. Now you can see that there's a unique email address here that you can use to also email documents into Form Simplicity. I don't bother with that, but some people like to have everything in Form Simplicity so you could use it. I just use Form Simplicity to create the documents that I need. So now I click here on Add Forms to Transaction. And the first thing is going to be a sale and purchase agreement. And as you can see up here is the as-is residential contract for sale. And I'm looking for just a traditional residential sale and purchase agreement. There's a lot of documents, so let me just go ahead and type up here. Oops, hold on. Here we go. Sale. Of course, my keyboard is not wanting to cooperate right now. I'm going to find sale. So that's going to bring down anything that has sales in it. That has a lot of sales contracts here. Assignment. Sales contract residential improved property. Sales contract residential vacant land. Sales as is. As is residential sales contract. I want this one down here, which is residential contract for sale and purchase. Florida Realtors Farber. So I check this box off here. Okay. I'm going to click Add to Transaction. Then I'm going to go back to Add to Forms, and I'm going to search for condominium. So very important, you want to have a homeowners association disclosure for homeowners association. You want to have a condominium disclosure for condominiums. Okay. So, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one here, Florida Realtor Farber Residential Contract Addenda Condominium Rider. Okay. And I'm going to add that to the transaction as well. So now if you look at the transaction, we have the residential contract here and we have the condominium rider, and we'll take a look at both of them and work our way through it. So the first thing is going to be the contract, of course. So I'm going to click here on the contract, which should open it up. Waiting for forms. Loading it. So as you can see, a lot of the information is already put in here. The parties, the seller, the buyer, the information here, condominium. Now other personal property items included are, you could put in, certain furniture items if they're included. A lot of lenders don't like to see furniture in here. So you may want to have a separate sale and purchase agreement for the furniture if it's a turnkey furnished property. Initial deposit. So let's say we put down a $10,000 earnest money deposit initially to accompany the contract, the offer. Closing agent information. So you want to put the name of the closing agent. So I'm going to just give a plug to Berlin Patton Ebling, which is the company that we use, and you want to put their address in there, phone number and email, and fax number. So you got to put that information in here. If you use someone else to hold the earnest money deposit, that person will be the escrow agent. You got to put their information in here. Okay. If you have a broker that has their own brokerage account, or let's say the listing agent is with Coldwell Banker and they have their own brokerage account and the check was payable to Coldwell Banker, which is something that was common 10 years ago, you will put that information in there. Today it's common to have a title company or a real estate attorney hold the earnest money, and so that's what you would want to put in here. Additional deposit, we're not going to have any additional deposit here, so it's going to put 0. Financing, so let's say this is a financing deal where we need to get 80% financing. So I would put in 80% financing, and then the balance to close, not including closing costs. Now you could put in here the dollar amount, figure 80% is this much, and then minus the deposit, blah, blah, blah. but that just gets very, very complex. So if it's a cash deal, I would put in, you know, 655 down here as a balance. But since it's a finance deal, I'm just going to type in here balance. Now we got to give a time frame, of course, by which it has to be accepted. So right now, today is Friday the 13th. I'm going to give them until Monday the 16th. And the closing date, let's say, would be June 20th, because I'm already squared away with my financing. Otherwise, I would probably make it 60 days. Then we'll go down here. Contract is contingent on financing. So for conventional loan, you know, fixed or adjustable rate, blah, blah, blah. So this is, you know, something you obviously discuss with your buyer, you know, if they have an interest rate limit or something on there. Make application within 5 days. I'm just going to keep that standard. Now we have closing costs to be paid. Okay. So very important here. On a standard contract, we have repair limits. And by default, it's 1.5%. A seller might balk at that with a very, very expensive property, but I'll start out at 1.5%. And if the seller's going to counter back on something else, then so be it. But 1.5% is basically $9,000. So that means if they find any warranted items, any items that need to be repaired per the contract. They used to be called warranted items, now they're called general repair items. So let's say the window isn't opening or there's something, you know, mechanical that has to be fixed. Then the seller agrees to pay for that up to the 1.5%. If you have a higher end property, you could put in a fixed dollar amount, you know, so you could put in here, let's say up to $1,000 or $2,000. The seller on a higher price, this is a $700,000 listing, the seller may very well counter back and make this 0 or make it 1% or 0.5%. But I'm just going to leave it here at 1.5%. The same thing for wood destroying organism treatment. That obviously wouldn't cost $10,000 to do that. So, but I'm just going to leave it open, because it becomes a negotiation item. Title evidence, I'll leave that blank too. Now here, who's going to pay for title? It's either buyer pays and selects or seller pays and selects. I'm going to put in here that the buyer selects and pays, but I'm going to ask the seller for a concession. Home warranty, I'm not going to worry about that. So I'll put NA, and then that's pretty much it here on check boxes and items to select till we get to the very end. And so at the very end, we want to make sure we reference any additional terms and items. So the first one is going to be the condominium rider. Very, very important. Okay. It's a condominium. We could put in Chinese drywall if it was built around the time that there was Chinese drywall. Let's take a look at when this was built here in 1983. So I'm not concerned about Chinese drywall because it was right around 2000 to 2005. And I'm also not concerned about lead-based paint. There's nothing in here that talks about seller's property disclosure statement. So here's what I'm going to put in under additional terms. I'm going to put in here a seller's property disclosure statement is attached and incorporated herein. And then the second thing I'm going to put in is the parking space. So we have here under building parking space goes with condominium. Let's see if I can just copy and paste that. So I'm going to put B, and I'm just going to copy and paste it right in here. Okay. And that's it for right now with respect to the offer. I'm going to click on save here. So it's saved. I'm going to close it for right now. Now I'm going to go into the condominium rider. Now the condominium rider here, it's very straightforward. Now approval is required. There's a $100 application fee. Now if the buyer is not approved, then the buyer could walk if we put a contingency in here. Okay. First right of refusal. We don't know that the association has a first right of refusal, but we're going to presume that they don't. Okay. And we're going to assume that they do not have a right. So in other words, it's not contingent on the current association members to approve the deal. Fee assessment, $525 per the listing. We don't know anything about assessments. The MLS listing didn't talk about assessments. So we're going to keep that blank. Of course, if it turns out that there is an assessment, then that would become a point that the buyer could use to cancel. Now here we have very important a selection to be made with respect to the documents. And we want to select this one here, obviously. And the agreement is voidable to a buyer by delivering written notice, blah, 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 within 3 days of receiving all of these documents. And here is buyer requests, current copy of the documents, very important. You could select does not request. And then this one would be the buyer's receipt if the documents were received. Okay. And now here it talks again about the parking space. So we're going to add that in here, 138, parking space 138. And we'll go ahead and save this now. All right, so now we have these two documents, and I'm going to download these documents, and I'm going to download them one at a time so it doesn't put them into a zip file. So I'm going to download this here. I'm going to uncheck this lock form. Actually, let's lock it. Just see what happens when we get into DocuSign. So we have the condominium rider. Okay. And now let's go down to the other one. Download. In the contract. So now in this folder that we created, we have all three documents. So now let's go into DocuSign, and I'm going to log into our DocuSign. The most important thing to remember when you use DocuSign is that you want to include all of the documents in your transaction into your package. So you don't want to send a buyer 5 different DocuSign things that are just going to be annoying. Okay, so in our case, I'm going to upload a bunch of documents. I'm going to upload all 3 of these here, first of all. And then we also have a buyer disclosure that we want to have the buyer sign as well. Okay, so we have the contract, the rider. So we can, I think, rearrange it. Condo rider, seller's disclosure, and then the real buyer property thing. Okay. Now, if I had a approval letter, a lender approval letter, I would add that here as well, because I want to put the entire package together that I'm going to then send on automatically to the listing agent. And I'll show you how to do that here in a second. So now we're going to go to the recipient and we're going to set a signing order. So the first thing is going to be, Sally, home buyer. Of course, I'm not going to send this off, but I'm going to set it up here as if. So this is Sally, home buyer. She needs to sign. Okay. Then we're going to add another recipient, which is going to be me. And I just need a copy, okay, because I don't have to sign anything here. If there was a lead-based paint, then I would add myself to sign as well, because I'll have to then, sign something for lead-based paint. But I want to get a copy because we're using a team account. I need to add myself here to receive a copy. But then I'm also going to add the listing agent, okay? So the listing agent, I would just copy and paste her information from here. But for right now, I'm just going to put in here listing at agent.net and just receives a copy. Okay. Then we have a message to all recipients. And I'm going to rename this a little bit here. I'm going to here offer to purchase for property address. Okay, I'm going to put the property address in here. Please find enclosed offer to purchase for this property. Now, remember, you as the agent are going to get a copy when it's signed, and the listing agent also gets a copy. So this is going to be the message that is going to be sent to the listing agent, and you can put some more information in here. Thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. And what I would do is I would immediately, when I get my copy, I know the listing agent got a copy too. I would then send a text message or call or email the listing agent, let them know, hey, you just received the copy. So this makes it easier. You don't have documents come back to you and then you have to forward them to the listing agent. You can just set it up so the listing agent automatically gets it the second the buyer signs it, and then the listing agent can forward it on to the seller. Most likely the listing agent is not going to give you the seller's information to send on to for signature, but it just makes it a little bit easier. Then we go to next here, and now we obviously set the initials. So we got, buyer initial here, buyer initial here. And I'm just going to go through the whole thing just to make sure you understand exactly how it is done. Buyer initial here. And of course, if there were two buyers, then you would do it once again for the other buyer and just click on to the next person. Buyer initial, buyer initial. Now I'm very, very comfortable after having done probably thousands of contracts that I have in here what I need, but I will still review it carefully before I actually upload it to DocuSign. So, I'm trying to save us some time here, but I would definitely look at all the documents after they're saved as PDF to make sure and go over every little item that nothing is missed, because you don't want to fire off a thing. And by the way, I noticed I did forget something here that I mentioned earlier that I wanted to do and I didn't do here, but I would put down here, it would have been B actually under building parking space, and then C I would have had seller to contribute up to 3% towards buyer's prepaid and closing costs. So I didn't do that here. If I saw this right now as we're doing it, I would go back into Form Simplicity, update the contract, go in here and just update it and correct it and save it and download it again and redo it. Because it has to be perfect. And then signature, of course, you got buyer sign, date signed here, and for some strange reason again, the initial here. And just work your way through here, buyer initial. And there's no other initials on these pages here for some reason. So what I always personally have done is I'm just going to go ahead and put a little initial at the bottom of every page anyhow. And just for fun. And then we have the seller's property disclosure statement, of course. Buyer initial. It's only 3 pages. Buyer initial. And of course you want to stress to your buyer that they need to read all of this and not to sign it unless it is acceptable to them. Okay. And then here we have our own little disclosure that I will have them initial and sign as well. And then print name of buyer. I'm going to use this field here. Where is it? Name. Bingo. And then I can hit send and send it off, and the document goes out to all of the parties. So that's basically in a nutshell how I would do it. And so you generate everything out of Form Simplicity here, which is linked directly to the MLS here with the little icon here. Download everything into a temporary folder, which I always put on my desktop initially because then it's easy to find. You know, my desktop here, sample transaction, I got the documents here. And upload everything into DocuSign when it's done, and then send it off. And on the recipient parts, I always put myself as a CC, so I get a copy of everything at the end. And then I would also add the listing agent as a CC. If there are 2 listing agents, add both of them, because in that way you know and you have a record that they received it. And then once you get your copy, the same instant they get their copy, and you just call them and let them know, hey, we just sent an offer to you. And make sure that you include everything in this DocuSign document, even if it doesn't need to be signed, you know, approval letters, anything else that you may have that you want to submit to the seller, to the listing agent, just include it here in the document package, and it'll all be ready to go. So that was that. Thank you so much for tuning in how to do a contract and offer out of the MLS through Simplicity, Form Simplicity, and then into DocuSign.